Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next live stream video. I'm Andrew Dalton, the Executive Director of the Adams County Historical Society in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I'm joined tonight by our historian, our chief historian at the Adams County Historical Society, Tim Smith. Many of you know Tim. He is the author of 10 books and countless articles about the Battle of Gettysburg and Adams County's history. He's also a licensed battlefield guide and an employee of the Adams County Historical Society. Tonight's program is on the roads that lead to Gettysburg. It's one of Tim's favorite programs, I'm told. So I'm very excited to hear his thoughts, and we will be monitoring the comments throughout the program, and I'll try to direct as many of your questions as I can to Tim. There's also a donate button tonight on the post. If you're in a position to do so, we'd really appreciate any size donation to help us continue to put on these programs every week. If you don't know much about the Adams County Historical Society, I hope you'll like our Facebook page and hop over to our website later. It's www.achs-pa.org. We are kind of the caretaker for all of Gettysburg and Adams County's history, including over 1 million historic items. And we provide research services, programs, and hopefully one day exhibits and a museum for the community and visitors to Gettysburg as well. So we're very excited to bring you this program tonight. Next week, we'll be back with another program on the resources that we have through the ACHS website. So if you're interested in research and local history and the Battle of Gettysburg, we'll go through some of the ACHS specific resources that you can find through our website. So I'm going to pass it over now to Tim, and we'll get into his program. Let me just get the first slide up here. All right, Tim, take it away.
Okay. So the program tonight is about the roads that lead to the town. And, you know, as I like the programs that tie the battle in with the local history, because we obviously get a dual audience, people who are interested in, live here and interested in our history, and then also people from the outside who are interested because it relates somewhat to the larger topic, of nationally known topic, the Battle of Gettysburg. And, you know, I do lots of battlefield tours and people come here, and, you know, there seems to be a lot of confusion about why the battle was fought here. And it's pretty simple. And so I always try to, at some point early in the tour, get across the fact that the battle was fought at Gettysburg because the roads led them there. And that's a quote from Bruce Catton, and several different books he writes this consensus that he came up with, and it's pretty accurate. And although it's not said that simply in every book on the battle, it's true. You know, 10 roads intersected to town. As the troops are marching through the area, they could not avoid the road hub, and the road hub led the armies here. And if it wasn't for this road hub, maybe the battle would be fought somewhere else. So with that said, let's start the program. I borrowed this map from a website called Stone Sentinels, which is a very good website about monuments on the battlefield. But he put this up, and it's a really interesting map, I think, because it shows the town, and it's one of the few maps that shows the 12 different roads that lead into the area. And that's the topic I always like to start with. How many roads lead into the town? Well, you know, it depends how you count. It depends which roads you count as roads leading into the town and roads you don't count. But you can see on this map, we have the 10 roads that generally people describe as leading into the town. And then we have 2 other roads, and that would be the Hunterstown Road, which spurs off of the York Road about a mile east of Gettysburg. And then, of course, he also has the Old Carlisle Road on here, which at the time, you know, today is known as the Table Rock Road. So if you put those 2 extra roads on it, then, you know, 10 roads lead into the town. You know, one of the reasons there's so many roads leading to the town is because of the Gettysburg is the county seat, its important position in south central Pennsylvania, just about 10 miles north of the Mason-Dixon line, which we have on this map shown with the big black line. And, you know, the next largest nearest towns that circle Gettysburg are Off to the east, York, Pennsylvania. A little to the northeast, Harrisburg. Directly north, Carlisle. Out to the west, Chambersburg. I also put on the map Hagerstown, a little bit to the south and west, and Frederick, more to the southwest, and Westminster, Maryland. We don't want to forget about Westminster, a little to the south and east, and of course, on the very bottom of the map, Baltimore. So the roads that lead into the town were constructed to bring goods in and send goods out to the various larger towns in the area. Baltimore being the most important town associated with Gettysburg because, of course, the large port. Now, again, Bruce Catton, here's another I think it's a slightly different variation on what he says, but in Bruce Catton's Gettysburg, the Final Fury, it was compounded partly of I can't know why am I saying that? Geography, which is to say that the armies fought at Gettysburg because the roads led them there. Let's go to the next quote. Now, other historians have talked about the road hub. John Batchelder wrote a tour guide to the Gettysburg battlefield in 1873, and it's called Gettysburg, What to See and How to See It. And in there, he mentions that the town of Gettysburg was created as a borough in 1806. It is regularly laid out, the streets crossing each other at right angles according to the 4 cardinal points of the compass. It is the center of 11 different roads which radiate from it like the spokes of a wheel from a common center. That's interesting that he chooses 11. You know, the ultimate historian, John Batchelder, I guess the term 11 roads just never stuck. But which road is he counting as an extra road, and which road is he not counting as an extra road? I'd really like to know. Edward Stackpole, they met at Gettysburg, which is, you know, one of the books that was around when I was a kid, one of the few comprehensive books on the battle. Maybe it's not the best book, but I really like how he sums it up. He says Gettysburg is the county seat of Adams County with about 2,000 people, and it's the hub of a network of 10 main and 2 branch roads, which angled out in every direction. So I like that he mentions that, you know, there are really 12 roads, but most of the time we just say that 10 roads led to the town. But again, it depends how you count. And also, these various roads leading into the town would be used by the troops who were marching to the battlefield. I think if I have a long list of books that I would like to write, which I probably am never going to write, but I always thought it would be really neat to do a book that is a audio tour of each of the roads that led to the town. So, you know, each would have a chapter, and you would start like on the Tawnytown Road, and you drive to Tawnytown, and it would talk about things that were along that road. And of course, each of the roads has stories about the troops that were marching to Gettysburg and camped along those roads. Now, here's one of the earliest maps of the town after the battle. Of course, in a normal map, the town wouldn't be shown as, you know, so prominently with all the other towns kind of faded out. But this is a map that appeared in Harper's Weekly magazine the month of the battle. And I really like it. You know, it's a much larger map, but I just zoomed in on the Gettysburg road hub. And you can see they have 6 roads intersecting into town. And then they show the railroad coming in. By the way, it's the earliest known reference to the village Germantown that is known to exist between 2 taverns and Littlestown for just no reason.
Maybe somebody cares about that, Tim.
People who live in Germantown care about that. Okay, so let's get to the next one. So early maps we have, and you can see some of these early roads on early maps. Here is the 1822 York Adams County map. And you can see in the center of the map, there is the town with the road hub. And I have a close-up of it here. And the close-up I got, of course, from the Library of Congress site, and it's in color. So this is much, much better. But you can see on this one, they have 11 of the 12 roads we're talking about. And, when I say 11 of the 12 roads, you can actually see off to the top right, you can see the Hunterstown Road going off. What you don't have on this map is the Carlisle Street, Neuville Road, we call it. The road that runs straight north out of the town, Route 34, and it goes to Bendersville. That road did not exist until 1829. We had the Old Carlisle Road, which, again, today we refer to as the Table Rock Road. And to get to the Old Carlisle Road, you actually went out of the town of Gettysburg on the Emmitsburg Road, or, there's still an extension called Emmitsburg Street. And near the tennis courts of Gettysburg College, then you veered off to the right, went across the fields, and then it went up onto what is now Table Rock Road. And so that's where the Old Carlisle Road originally came in. And again, it wasn't until later, we'll talk about this, that Carlisle Street was extended, and then they put another road in called the Neuville Road. Okay. And here's the 1858 map. And by this time, they do have that road that runs straight north out of the town. And if you look at up near the top of that map, Andrew, you can see where the stream, I think we refer to that a lot of times as Blocker Run. You can see the Blocker Farm, and that's where the car wash is, right at that intersection at Table Rock Road and Carlisle Road. It's interesting to point out that the road to the left that we refer to as the Carlisle Road today, that road went to Bendersville at the time of the Civil War, and it went over the mountain to Pine Grove Furnace and to Neuville. And that was referred to as the Neuville Road. The Carlisle Road was the Table Rock Road and went to Carlisle. And it wasn't until much later that they put in, just before you get to Bendersville, that curve that veers around and goes over towards Aspers and Gardner's, and then it connects to the Old Carlisle Road at Idaville. So the thing that irks me just a little bit is if you see maps of the battlefield and somebody has the Neuville Road labeled as a Carlisle Road, that's incorrect, because that road did not go to Carlisle at that time. These are very, very important things to me. But you can see on that map, it gives a good indication of the roads. Now, one of the earliest maps we have of the area that shows the early road system is the map of Pennsylvania done by Nicholas Skull in 1770. And on this particular map, off to the right in the right center of the map is the town of York. And of course, we were York County at that time. And coming out of York County, a road was established in 1747. And that road ran out through what is now Abbottstown and what is now New Oxford. Abbottstown was there at the time, but New Oxford was not. And it ran out, you can see through the township Berwick in the center of the map. Maybe if you look a little bit, Andrew, if you highlight Berwick over there, and that's Abbottstown. And then just beyond that, there's an intersection of where the road breaks off. And basically it's what is today Route 30 and what is Swift Run Road. Let's go to the next one.
We do have a question. We have somebody from Aspers who's curious where Aspers is exactly on this map.
Well, Aspers is not a town until they put in the Gettysburg Harrisburg Railroad line in the 1880s. So on this particular map, if you can look to the left where it says Manalaun, that is Manalaun Township, and you see where it says Quaker Temple. That is the old Manalaun meeting house that was at current Center Mills at 234 and Center Mills Road, and near 234, but Center Mills Road, if you know where Center Mills is. And then that where the temple is, that road later would continue across to Biggerville, and then you go up towards Aspers. So it's on the side of, on this map, Aspers would be where Trent Mountain is shown on this map, a little north of Manalaun. Let's go to the next one. So this is a blow up of just that section of the road we're talking about. So Berwick off to the right is Abbottstown. And when you come out of Abbottstown, New Oxford's not there. Once you got beyond what is now New Oxford, the road branched off, and both of these branches were put in starting in 1747. And the northern branch is basically today Swift Run Road to Hunterstown, and then it's Shriver's Corner Road to Golden Road or Goldenville Road, I'm sorry, Goldenville Road to what is now Mummersburg, and then it's Hilltown Road all the way out through the gap in the mountain range. And the lower road is the Marsh Creek Road. And that's the road that leads through present Gettysburg. And the Marsh Creek Road basically is Route 30 East to a certain extent, is from New Oxford to Gettysburg. And then once it gets to Gettysburg, the road is actually the Fairfield Road or 116 that runs down towards the southwestern portion of our county, and it goes through the mountains. And probably, I know that some people used to argue about this. I kind of lean to the fact that it's Jack's Mountain Road that went over towards the Waynesboro Turnpike instead of 116 all the way out to Zorra. Some of these things we're working with are evidence of where the road goes, and when the road went where is based on some very slim information. So it's not really, some of this is not set in stone. But here on this map, I wanted to show you, again, this is 1770, so the town of Gettysburg is not here, but there is where the town would be. And you can see it's between Marsh Creek and Rock Creek on this map, and you can see some of the Presbyterian churches around it at that time. Okay. So here is the 1765 survey for Samuel Gettys's 381 acres of land. And I oriented it, north so you could see that. And you can see on the map in 1765, it's called the Marsh Creek Road. And that it passes through the center of the town, would be right down along that, where that road is now. And this map shows he owns a lot more land north of the present town than he did south of the present town. But you can get a good idea of the Marsh Creek Road on his, how it fits into his tract of land. And that would be the first and the second of the 10 roads that we're talking about. Okay. So this map was made by Arthur Weiner. And the purpose of the map is to show some of the early property boundaries on the eastern side of the town. This is from a larger map he has. And what I wanted to point out here was that the original Marsh Creek Road that came into the town of Gettysburg from the east did not come in along the current Route 30 as we know it. So somewhere out beyond Walmart or out near the 15 interchange, the road swung south, and it went behind the Marshall's Shopping Center, I guess we're calling it now, and behind the area where Sheets is. And you can actually see here, there where it says John Galbraith on the map, there is a line under his property, and where it runs along what is shown as between tract 225 on Arthur Weiner's map and tract 15, there's a long diagonal line there. That's the trace of the old road. And some of you may have been on tours of the Daniel Lady farm. And I know sometimes when they give their tours, and Troy Harmon gives tours out there, for instance, for the national park, they'll talk about how at the northern edge of their property is a portion of an old road bed that ran along that. And what they're talking about is the old Marsh Creek Road. And so it came down near the current Hanover Road, crossed Rock Creek, just north of the modern Hanover Road, and then came into the town from that direction. So it came in a slightly different direction. And it wasn't until much later in the early 1800s that they pushed the road northward, maybe as early as the 1790s, they pushed it northward along the modern trace of what is now Route 30. And of course, we have some photographs, when these roads cross creeks, they have to build a bridge. Now, early on, they have fords, but in the early 1800s, there were bids put out for these various bridges that needed to be constructed, and people would bid, and people would get the contract, and they would build the bridge to specifications. And of course, in the like I said, late 1790s, early 1800s, they needed bridges across the creeks. I did not look up the date for the York Pike Bridge, but I'm sure I have it somewhere. But what I have circled here on the map is the York Pike Bridge. And then right above it, I have the bridge where the Gettysburg-Harrisburg Railroad crosses over. And of course, we have some photographs of these original bridges. So let's go to those. Some of you, here we are, looking south from the railroad. This is an 1878, 1880 view, looking towards the Route 30 bridge. And yes, that is the bridge that has been the subject of construction for most of our adult lives. At least it seems like it. So the bridge is finished now and it's really in good shape. But that's the original bridge, the stone arch bridge that covered that area. And that was there for many years.
Tim, are there how many bridges like this are still left in Adams County, these stone arch bridges?
The stone arch bridges, there's a few of them. One that comes to mind immediately is the Humpback Bridge. I think they refer to it on, Latimer Creek Road? It's over, or Latimer Bermudian Creek Road in Latimer Township. I think that's what the road is, up near Trossel's Quarry, where the dinosaur footprints were found. And I don't know if we still use it, but on our Facebook site, we used to have a picture of that bridge up on the site. But that one comes to mind.
I believe it's our cover photo on our Facebook page, actually. So
okay,
you can look at one of the surviving stone arch covered regular bridges. And then, of course, there's at least, I think there are 3 or 4 covered bridges still in Adams County, wooden cover bridges.
It depends how you count. Yeah,
right.
There's one you drive across. Only one covered bridge is still drive across, but stone arch bridges, I know one you drive across. The problem is, they have the hump in them, and I guess they're prone to be not as wide as they need to be.
Right, and we've got somebody pointing out that this bridge looks a lot like the Burnside Bridge at Antietam.
Excellent.
Which is true.
Excellent. Yes. And here's another photograph of the bridge. I just threw it in there because you don't see many photographs of this bridge. But here we are in the winter in like 1888, I think, and we're on the south side of the bridge looking across up the creek towards the railroad bridge that you can't see in the distance. And also I wanted to point out that, eventually the Marsh Creek Road was taken over by a turnpike company, and we have a toll house that once stood. And you can see in this, it's about halfway between the bridge, well, more than halfway, and where the turnoff is for the Hunterstown Road. So I didn't look at a modern map to see exactly where it is, but it's near the car dealership there as you drive out Route 30 towards Giant or Walmart. And that brings up a point I wanted to mention. Some of the roads were built early on by the state. Some of them were built by the county. Some of the roads are built by townships. Let's go to the next one. And some of the roads are built by private organizations, and these would be turnpike companies. Stockholders would get together, they would sell stock, they would incorporate their turnpike company with the state of Pennsylvania, and a toll was charged to use the road. So they put up some money, they'd build the road, or they would take over an existing road from the state or county, improve the road, and make it into a turnpike and charge money. And then they have a toll gate house or toll gate houses set up at certain intervals to collect money for people using the road. And they're not like out to get everybody that uses the road with a horse or a wagon. They're charging businesses who are bringing freight from one place to another on these roads. Andrew?
So we do have one question here. Is the bridge that we just talked about here the one that's near Schmuck's Lumber today?
Yes. Just let's see. No, let's see. Is that how close is it? That's pretty close.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yep. I was going to say it's near Beer Mart, but Beer Mart's not there anymore. Okay, but
Very good.
Yes. So in a turnpike, the term itself comes from the long pike, which is sometimes associated with military purposes, that is across the road. And you can see it in this illustration. This is not a local turnpike house. But what happens is, they'd have this pike across the road, and then when you came up and paid your toll, they would turn the pike and it would open up. So it didn't raise up and down, like you imagine that it does just because you've been on the turnpike. No, it turns to the side. It doesn't raise. It's not a raised pike. It's called a turnpike. Okay, let's go to the next one, Andrew. And now when we get west of Gettysburg, the same road, and again, now if you want to count, we're on number 2. If you're west of the town, the original road came out of the town and went across what was referred to as the Old Millerstown Road. And if you look at this map, that is in the center, and it's the road that comes on an angle out from Chambersburg Street out towards or the Adams County Historical Society building. I put on this map in red the Adams County Historical Society building and where we are, where I'm sitting right now. And we have photographs of this old stretch of the road, which was there at the time of the battle, but was abandoned shortly after the Civil War. Let's go to the next one. This is a famous photograph of the town from Seminary Ridge, basically taken from the back porch of the Adams County Historical Society, looking down the old Millerstown Road towards the town. And this road no longer exists. Springs Avenue does not follow the trace of that road. On this photograph, Springs Avenue would be off to the left of the road and follow a totally different trace. So, and none of this exists anymore. Here's another image. This is from about 1890, and it's from the top of Middle Street, Seminary Ridge, West Confederate Avenue, Seminary Ridge, and looking down Middle Street towards the town. And if you look off to the left in this photograph, you can see that same group of rocks, and now they've eliminated that trace of the road off to the left. It's kind of still there, but Springs, the buildings along Springs Avenue, the more modern houses, are sitting on the old trace of the Millerstown Road. Andrew?
Great. So we've got, first of all, thank you to the 9 people who've already donated to help us with costs associated with doing all these programs. We thank you so much for that. And we have some excellent questions here. So Gary's asking, how many of the 10 to 12 roads were toll roads at the time of the battle?
Good. So the York Pike and the Baltimore Turnpike, the Chambersburg Turnpike, which is the same turnpike company. Some of the turnpike companies are the same. So I guess the Chambersburg Turnpike, the Baltimore Turnpike, and the York Turnpike. And the other ones are just roads.
Great. And then we have another question. Did Jackson send his cartographer to Gettysburg to survey the area in the winter of 1862 to 1863?
Well, he Jackson, his spies or cartographers are in the area. They're here to buy maps. They buy up maps, the county maps of, they have this large map that's on display. I saw a copy of it at the Hanley Library in Winchester. I think the original somewhere else, but this large map that they put together is based on county maps that had been surveyed by somebody else, but then they had spies come in and put topographical features on them. And if you read one of the Adams County journals, Ben Neely wrote an article about Charles John Will, I think his name is, at the Globe Hotel. And he says that one of Jackson's spies is there, and he recognized him later when the Southern Army invades, working on that map.
Great. And one more question. Joe's asking if Dunlap's restaurant is near the old Millerstown Road. And it is. The Millerstown Road would have started probably just a little bit closer to town and then moved up toward the seminary campus, as Tim discussed. Yeah. So I think that's all the questions for now. We can get going to the next couple slides.
So again, we just put some old Millerstown Road photographs, or what is kind of 116. I think it's interesting that some of you might be knowledgeable about Breams Hill Road. If you go west of Gettysburg, Breams Hill Road goes off to the right and it goes up the hill. The old roadbed did go up the hill and then down the hill towards Breams Tavern and across Marsh Creek. And this stretch of the old road is still there. And of course, we just threw in here for you a picture of Breams Tavern, and that's where the Marsh Creek Road crossed Marsh Creek. And I tell you, that tavern is one of the earliest taverns in the area. The frame building off to the left of the stone building. The frame building no longer stands, but the brick building does stand, and it's just in a remarkable state of preservation. And the old tavern, though, set beside it. And here on this map, the Warren map of the battlefield from 1868, 1869, you can see the stone arch bridge over Marsh Creek shown, and you can see the old roadbed coming across the creek. And we have another photo of the bridge over Marsh Creek, the original bridge, which was just spectacular. And off the top of my head, I should have gotten the date of this. I think it's like 1817, 1819 that they built this bridge, and it was there until after the Civil War. And here's another picture of the rampart leading onto the bridge, looking east with a Black Horse Tavern there on the other side of the bridge. Francis Bream ran Black Horse Tavern, but the McClellan family ran the tavern, and we're not sure exactly when it started, but it could, we know that they were running it by the 1780s and 90s, but possibly 1760s.
Right, and a large portion of the Confederate Army retreated right across this bridge toward Fairfield, Pennsylvania, after the Battle of Gettysburg. And in fact, we have an account that Tim has shared with me with Robert E. Lee himself standing in the yard of the Black Horse Tavern, directing the withdrawal of the Confederate Army from the battlefield. So this is another great photo, probably the earliest photo. These two are the only really early photos we have of this intersection. And I believe they're both in the collection of the Historical Society.
Now, the third and fourth road that we're going to talk about is on this map, it's shown as the Black Scap Road. And the Black Scap would be the gap in the mountain they're talking about near Cashtown. But the Black Scap Road, the Black family had a tavern in what is now Emmitsburg. And so generally Black Scap refers to the road that leads to Emmitsburg and then the road that leads over the mountain. It's interesting that there's no direct road to Chambersburg from the town of Gettysburg early on in our history. As a matter of fact, if you want to go to Chambersburg, you have to go to Emmitsburg, and then you have to veer off to the left on the Hilltown Road and go over the mountain near, Hilltown, and then beyond Cashtown, it goes over the gap in the mountain. And you probably know that it's called Black Scap Road on the other side of the mountain in Franklin County. But we have an early survey of the Baltimore Shippensburg Road at that time. And of course, when you get over the mountain, then Black Scap Road goes to Shippensburg. And Shippensburg had been around prior to Chambersburg. And at one time, Shippensburg was the major city that led to the west. And then eventually, Western Pennsylvania. And eventually, Chambersburg replaced that, and roads started veering off towards Chambersburg instead of Shippensburg. But Shippensburg was an important town in our area of Pennsylvania early on. And we have the survey for the Baltimore Shippensburg Road. And the survey is from 1769. It is awesome. It shows the early settlers who lived along the road, and there's all kinds of interesting features. But when they laid out the road in 1769, the Baltimore Shippensburg Road created an intersection with the Marsh Creek Road at Samuel Gettys Tavern, according to this map, Gettys. But so maybe you should call it Gettysburg. But Samuel Gettys also owned a mill along Rock Creek, which eventually was turned into a stone mill and taken over by the McAllister family. But you can see on this map, Samuel Gettys or Gettys, originally owns McAllister's mill. And just north of him, you'll see on the map, on the survey, it says Laughlin McVeigh. And there's no doubt that the Laughlin McVeigh house on this map would later become the Abraham Spangler house. And let's go to that. And of course, that still stands on the Baltimore Pike, across from near the entrance of the Gettysburg National Military Park Visitor Center. And so it's one of the older houses in the area. I think, and justifiably, we don't have many sources on exactly when the house is built. So we argue about the date of the house.
Just one question from the last slide. Someone's asking whether the Confederates destroyed any bridges during the retreat in Adams County.
Well, they destroyed railroad bridges. I don't recall any bridge structure being built. These things are really hard to destroy. There's a great story in 1862 when Jeb Stuart raids that he goes north of Chambersburg to destroy the bridge of Scotland, and they're going to burn it to the ground. They're going to burn it, destroy it. the railroad bridge, and it's made out of metal. And they get there and they can't destroy it. They don't do it at all. But then they do hit it in 1863 once they know what they're up against. These things are hard to destroy.
And another person kind of wondering how roads originated. Were they paths that were well trafficked? Were they Native American routes going through the forest before this land was cleared?
Most likely.
Yeah, I guess we don't have a lot of documentary evidence about that period.
Some roads we know were paths used by Native Americans, like the Monocacy Road. The first road established officially in Adams County is the Monocacy Road. And that's basically the road that leads from York to Hanover, down through Abbottstown, and then, I should say Abbottstown to Hanover, and then through Littlestown and out towards Frederick, Maryland to the Monocacy River. And we think that was officially laid out in 1740, but it's known to have followed an old Indian trail. Undoubtedly, the road through the Narrows is an old Indian trail, but other ones maybe are just paths that were used by settlers and then converted into roads.
One other question, Mike, our friend Mike is asking, do you have photos of the toll booth on the Baltimore Pike?
There are several toll booths on the Baltimore Pike at different times. That's another thing about the toll gate companies. There might be a toll gate at one point, and then later they converted to another toll gate later. The one at the time of the battle close to Gettysburg, south of town on the Baltimore Pike, he's probably thinking of, is owned by Fleming Hoax at the time of the Civil War. And I do not have an early photograph of the Fleming Hoax toll gate, but shortly after the Civil War, they move it north of town, and it becomes the Bushmen's run it at what we call the Peffer residence at the time of the battle. And we do have a photograph of that coming up.
One other great question, the Black family, is this the same Black family that's in the graveyard on Belmont Road in Cumberland Township?
I think it is, yeah. The Reverend John Black he's the minister of the Upper Presbyterian, Upper Marsh Creek Presbyterian Church, and I think some of his sons are associated with the Black's Tavern.
Just want to take one more second to thank everybody. We've had 14 people donate. We've raised $250 already tonight, so thank you so much, everyone.
I love the subject. Okay, so here it is, and the gentleman just asked about this. I even forget who asked the question already, but this is an extraordinary photograph from July of 1863, recorded by Frederick Gutekunst. And this, we don't have the original. This is from the National Park Service collection. It is incredibly clear photograph, and it is taken of the toll gate house along the Baltimore Pike. And this is directly across from, oddly enough, the Pike restaurant. And today it's just a hole in the ground, but it stood into the 1980s, and I clearly remember it standing before it fell down. And this, though, was not the toll gate at the time of the battle. This became a toll gate house after the Civil War, but it still was used as a toll gate house later on, but not when this photograph was taken. And the Peffer family lived there at the time. Now I have I have this photograph, and if you look, it's kind of hard to see. I didn't intend on showing the toll gate when I shot this image, and I should have, but this is the John Batchelder isometrical map of the battlefield. And we are at Rock Creek. We are looking sort of west or north. It's kind of hard. We're kind of looking north west, and you can see the bridge over Rock Creek on the Baltimore Turnpike. And then at the very bottom, I cut it off kind of. Can you see where it says toll gate? That is Fleming Hoax toll gate house at the time of the Civil War. And of course, it was used as a hospital. It's a big stone house, sits on the road. I don't know, there was a business there for a while. I remember it was Moon's Imports for a while, but the house still stands. Just north of the bridge on this map, you can see a mill. And that mill also appears on the Warren map with the creek running parallel to the road. Let's go to that one, Andrew. And you can see, now this is looking north-south, but you can see the bridge over the Baltimore Pike at the bottom. And then you can kind of see where it says hospitals, and you see the Musser farm. And then right above it is the sawmill that was used as a hospital by elements of the Second Army Corps after the battle. And we have some photographs of that. It no longer stands. It would have been on the Baltimore Pike. Let's go to the next one. Along not far from the Rock Creek Bridge. But here's a 1868 photograph that was given to me by Sue Boardman, who collects Gettysburg photography, and an 1898 photograph from the collections of the Adams County Historical Society of this site that was used as a Civil War hospital and a sawmill before and after the battle. That is kind of interesting. We're really into the sawmill. Okay, let's get to the next one. Oh, I wanted to mention, as we talk about pikes, there are mile markers, and some of these mile markers still exist. Every once in a while, someone tells me about an old mile marker. Some of them have really interesting inscriptions on them. At Wade Avenue on Baltimore Street, near the Jenny Wade birthplace, if you look at the telephone pole, let's go to the next slide, you can see there is a marker, and that marker says on it, 52M to B. Now, I've known about this, most of my life, and knew that 52 miles to Baltimore is what it meant. But it wasn't until much more recently that I realized that that thing had been placed there to replace another marker that had been there before that. Let's go to the next one. And this marker is in the collections of the Adams County Historical Society. It's currently on display at the Gettysburg Heritage Center. And this 52M to B marker probably had been there early on. And we have no idea when it was put there, but it was taken out, replaced by the other one, probably in the 1930s. And eventually someone donated the original marker to us. I took the photograph and wrote in, so you could see the 52M to B. It's really hard to see originally. Let's go to the next one. Now, some of you might know that on the York Turnpike at Cross Keys, if you go through New Oxford towards Abbottstown and you get stopped at that light, Cross Keys, look to your right in front of the, is it Lutheran home there, or the Brethren? It's a Lutheran home. On your right, there's a marker, and it says Philadelphia 108 miles, York 22 miles, and Gettysburg 6 miles behind you. It is an awesome marker. It is still there. You can see it. I didn't really get a modern photograph of it because it's hard to stop there and take a photograph. Now, north of town, we got this crazy road intersection at the time of the Civil War. And it's where three of these roads come together that we're talking about. And it's the Black's Turnpike Road, which a small section of it still exists, called Mummersburg Street. So you can actually go walk along that old section of the Black's Turnpike. And then it went out across the Gettysburg College, and it's the Mummersburg Road, basically. And like I said, the Blacks had a tavern at Mummersburg. And then on the right, we have the Harrisburg Road that was put in 1811, and that comes into the town at a sharp angle. And in 1829, they built a road to Neuville in Cumberland County. And of course, that road goes through today Biglerville, and of course, Bendersville. And you can see that when they put this road, that road intersection was there at the time of the battle with these three roads coming to the town, caused massive confusion during the retreat of the 11th Army Corps, all these roads coming together. But when they put the road straight ahead, and you can see on this map, it's called the Carlisle Road. When I went up to the intersection there at Blocker's Run near the top of the map, remember the original Carlisle Road ran off to the right, and the Neuville Road ran off to the left. And they erased the trace of the Carlisle Road that led from that point all the way down to the Mummersburg Road. On this, maybe you can see a fence line that runs along there, and it says 401, and it comes out at the Kitzmiller house. In this map, Kitzman, but Kitzmiller lived, the house still stands near the Gettysburg College tennis court. Let's go to the next one. Now, this road trace does not show on any battlefield maps, but clearly it was still there at the time of the battle, because this is a 1938 photograph from the 75th anniversary encampment, and we're looking in the middle of the photograph at the intersection of the Carlisle Road and Howard Avenue. And if you look north of it, the car wash is not there yet. but you can see the old Carlisle Road coming into the top of the photograph, and you can see cars driving across the field. Let's go to the next one. On the old trace of the old Carlisle Road. And I remember finding this photograph in a collection of the Adams County Historical Society one day, and Woody Christ was incredibly excited. I'd never seen him so excited because he had always, this was one of his favorite things to talk about, the old Carlisle Road and where it originally came into the Emmitsburg Road. And you can see it there, even though it's not on any battlefield maps. It probably was there during the battle, kind of a sunken lane. Okay. The Harrisburg Road we just talked about 1811, it's called the State Road. It was laid out by the state of Pennsylvania, and it runs from Gettysburg towards Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. You probably know if you ride along it, you don't have to take 15. You can take the old Harrisburg Road along there. And again, Route 15 in the bigger scheme of things is pretty modern. If you go along the old Harrisburg Road, you see all the motels that used to be along there and all the businesses that kind of went out of business when they opened up the modern 15. I'm sure people didn't mind taking an extra hour to get to Gettysburg from Harrisburg on the old road. Why do we need a highway? Okay. But here in this
Unpopular
map,
opinion, I think.
well, this map, you can see where the old Harrisburg Road crosses Rock Creek, and you can see the Josiah Benner farm, and even above it, we have the the barn that they just restored. Oh, and the Kime farm, yeah. But I was in the barn right above that they recently restored. But there was a covered bridge across Rock Creek into Harrisburg Road at the time of the battle. I think I have the John Batchelder isometrical map here. And if you look at the very top of the map, you see Rock Creek, and they show kind of a framed, kind of covered bridge that crossed it, kind of an odd looking bridge. And then a little farther on Rock Creek, you can see the railroad bridge. We don't have any early photographs of that. Destroyed by the Southerners. That's a bridge they did destroy. So they could destroy the railroad capabilities of Gettysburg on June 26th. And then just south of that, we have the Stone Bridge over the York Pike. And then south of that, we have a covered bridge over the Hanover Road, which is laid out early on. Let's go to that one. The Hanover Road, I think, and the Hanover Road, again, it's not one of the nicer roads that led into the town, but you can see the covered bridge there in this view. We're on top of Benner's Hill looking west towards the town, and you can see the covered bridge that led over the Hanover Road. And that covered bridge was definitely there also at the time of the battle. We have a few mentions of it in civilian accounts that talk about the bridge. And I like this slide. This is the Emmitsburg Road. Again, one of the roads laid out after Adams County became a county in the early 1800s. And the Emmitsburg Road, just like the Hanover Road, you notice, these are not well-maintained roads. They're not macadamized. They're not owned by a turnpike company. When it's not rained in a while, the roads are incredibly dusty. And when it does rain, they're just filled with mud. And you can imagine the potholes and, maybe even have to cross some streams, small streams, at various points. They're not that nice. And so this is the Emmitsburg Road, just south of the town. So, it's interesting. If you came here in the 1890s, early 1900s, they have battlefield roads that are the Telford roads that are like paved, but then to get here, you have to ride on roads like this. And so it's nice to see that. Andrew?
We have a great question from our friend Rob Gillis. Was there a reason for covered bridges versus non-covered bridges?
Well, I think it has to do with you build a bridge and you want to keep the bridge from deteriorating. So putting a cover on the bridge, a roof over the bridge, especially if it's a wooden bridge, keeps the planks of the bridge intact, and the bridge will last much longer. I've also heard stories that horses are hesitant to cross a bridge if they can see that they're elevated and they can see the running water below it. So the cover bridge provides it some protection so the horses don't know that they're going across the stream. I don't know how true that is. I think it's more about the weathering.
Another question is,
let me just point out that at one point, there were like 40 covered bridges in Adams County. And today, there's only 4 left and only 1 that you can still drive across.
another great question. Does the Emmitsburg Road follow the original road to Frederick, Maryland?
No. The Emmitsburg Road goes to Emmitsburg. And then there's a series of different roads because, to get to Frederick, you have to ride. It doesn't, Emmitsburg to Frederick is very, when I was studying the route of the First Army Corps march towards Emmitsburg, it's very convoluted and complicated. So it's a little different than you might look. You'd have to look at some Maryland maps to get the gist of what I'm saying. Go ahead. Did you have another one? Oh, and then of course the Taneytown Road. I am, anybody knows me, talk about this, knows I'm fascinated with the Taneytown Road. So here's a map of the Alexander Dobbin Spring Lots. And the Taneytown Road, it must be a slow process in laying it out. But this map, I think I established this like from 1803, but the Taneytown Road's really not laid out until 1808. So Baltimore Street in South Baltimore Street in Gettysburg was called the Taneytown Road on this map. And the Baltimore Road, as shown on this map, is actually the Baltimore Shippensburg Road, and it's Wainwright Avenue. And so at the bottom of the Baltimore Hill. So Taneytown Road actually ran out of the town of Gettysburg. And I put this illustration up with a line so you can see that the original Taneytown Road actually went up and over and through the National Cemetery and through Evergreen Cemetery and went directly down and then connected with the Taneytown Road much farther down. So I just think that's fascinating. Now, we don't have any maps that show the original course of the Taneytown Road, but and some of this is speculation, but this is logically how it must be. Let's get to the next one. And of course, we have this great image of Basil Biggs and his family in front of the Fry House. And somebody asked this question the other day. They purchased it in 1865, but this must be from around the turn of the century, 1900. And you can see the state of the Taneytown Road at that time. And again, while the battlefield roads are Telford and macadamized, macadamized, these roads are not. Let's go to the next one. And then the Chambersburg Turnpike. So the Chambersburg Turnpike is laid out in 1809. There's an act passed by the state's legislature. By 1812, they are grading the road. It's totally completed by 1815. But again, they don't call it Chambersburg Street because that street didn't lead to Chambersburg until this road was laid out. So early on, Chambersburg Street's called West York Street. Carlisle Street is called North Baltimore Street because it doesn't lead to Carlisle. But the Chambersburg Turnpike is laid out, and we at the Adams County Historical Society are fortunate to have stockholders' records of it. It was laid out as the western extension of the Gettysburg, of the Baltimore Shippensburg Road. And here's one of the books that we have an illustration of the where the road actually crosses and the property owners that it ran by in 1812. Do we have another one, or is that?
I think that's the last one. We do have a very good question here from our good friend Kurt Musselman. He's asking about the naming of the Millerstown Road, when that name came about. And I know we've talked in previous presentations about how Fairfield, was known as Millerstown, but it wasn't a designated name. That it was.
Yeah,
Fairfield.
There's no official names of roads. So
Right.
It technically is never the Millerstown Road, but people call it the old Millerstown Road because it leads to this place called Millerstown that was never known by the name Millerstown. Fairfield was always called Fairfield. Early on, it was called Fairfield, but local residents referred to it as, John Miller's Town, or it's just probably like Gettys, where people say it's called Gettys Town, but it was never called Gettys Town. It's James Gettys's town. So Millerstown Road is kind of a name for the road. But you're hard pressed to find names for things in these official documents. But Millerstown Road, now of course we think it's Millerstown Road, is a totally different road that that leads from the peach orchard out across. But we're fortunate that we have lots of photographs of the Chambersburg Pike, and in this image of the Chambersburg Pike, you can actually see the crushed stone on the road. So what they would do is take stone, put it on the road, and then it would take a large barrel filled with water, make it really heavy, and push it on top of the stones and crush the stones. And so these roads were actually, somewhat macadamized, as we refer to it. And they'd use an oil in with the stone. And so they're sort of paved in some places. You can see that they pave them where there's potholes and stuff, but not every place.
And we should point out too, at the top of this photograph, you can see the Dustman Farm on the top of Seminary Ridge. This is land that, and right behind it, of course, is Mary Thompson's house, which was Lee's headquarters during the battle. All land that's preserved by the American Battlefield Trust, our friends and partners.
And the Sheets house as well, who are friends of ours. Now, this photograph is taken near the edge of the town at the current Springs Avenue and Buford Avenue, and you can see where the stream runs under the road. And you can still find that spot. Oh, and I put a close-up so you can see the crushed stone. And maybe there's a few road apples in the pile of crushed stone also. Let's go to the next one. And then I wanted to show on the Chambersburg Pike, we do have some really nice photographs of the bridge over Marsh Creek on Route 30 West. Now, the Chambersburg Pike. This photograph, I think, was taken like in 1908. So it's a much more recent photograph than some of the other bridge photographs I've shown. And you can see that the bridge is not in the best shape in this photograph. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't even know if I've tried to research this, when that was replaced by a more modern bridge. But you can see, even though these bridges lasted a while, eventually they had to be replaced. Andrew. Well, and speaking of Kurt Musselman, that's nice that he asked a question. I hope he's happy to see this. Kurt Musselman gave us this particular image. And Andrew, would you like to talk about it? Oh, we lost Andrew's text.
Oh, here we are. Yeah. Okay. So this is, sorry, we're still getting used to all this technology. We're very fortunate that I believe Kurt made a very nice scan of this for us. The toll gate was located just on the Gettysburg side of Willoughby's Run. During the battle, there was a Widow Johns, who lived in the house, and her daughters were with her. I think she may have died either a little before or a little after the battle. But her daughters were there, and we have several references to the toll gate during the battle. And at one point, the toll was actually moved closer to Gettysburg in order to collect money from visitors to the Springs Hotel, which would be built on the former Gettysburg Country Club property after the Civil War. So there's a lot of great stories of this toll gate along the Chambersburg Pike.
Okay, let's see what we have next. Oh, but I love this. This is an actual print from a book that we have an original copy of, a book published about the state of Pennsylvania in 1843. And it shows someone in a wagon using the unfinished railroad cut into Gettysburg instead of the Chambersburg Turnpike, which would have been off to the right. And we know from newspaper accounts and some other literature that people would avoid the toll gate houses. So they would come down the pike, they would use the pike, but then they would try to veer off into the field and go around the toll gate so they could avoid paying the toll at these locations. And here's somebody using the unfinished railroad embankment to get into town. In 1867, there's a photograph of the unfinished railroad, and there's actually a fence across it. And you can see, that fence is obviously placed there to try to keep people from getting around paying the toll. So it's fascinating that we have this image in this famous image, and he's using that as a toll gate. Now, I wanted to end here that the Adams County Historical Society does have road dockets of early roads. Now, we have some road dockets from York County and from the Lancaster County courthouse that we made copies of, but we also have a large collection of original documents after Adams County becomes a county. Now, we don't have all the side streets and all the side roads, but a lot of them we do have. And here's an image of what we call the Wheatfield Road. At the top is the Tawnytown Road. At the bottom is the Emmitsburg Road. And actually what we're looking at is the trace of the road from the 1840s that led across, the wheat field, past the peach orchard, into the Valley of Death, and up Little Round Top. So we have some tracings of these early roads. And this one's really nice for me because it shows the property owners along the road as you go along. So, we do have some records pertaining to early roads, turnpike companies, not everyone, and, not every road, but, and really, you find out that in some of these road documents, they give the road names, but street names really are not associated with roads until, much more modern history, like the 1940s. So some roads have unofficial roads, like Bullfrog Road, because there were ponds in which there were bullfrogs in it. But the official names don't come about until much later.
Thank you so much, Tim. So I just also wanted to thank the about 150 people who have been watching with us tonight. We so appreciate spending some time with you and sharing our local history. And I wanted to announce that we've raised $325 tonight during this program. So thanks all of you to the 17 people who donated. It's not too late if you want to click the button and chip in. We work really hard to keep over 1 million historic items preserved safely so that the community and visitors can learn and enjoy the stories of Adams County and Gettysburg, which are, in my opinion, some of the best stories in all of United States history. And we're lucky to have them all right here in our backyard. So thank you, Tim, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Like I said at the beginning of the show tonight, we will be back next week with a program about resources you can find on the Adams County Historical Society's website. I encourage you to check that out if you can after you finish watching our presentation tonight. And we hope you'll consider joining and donating. And we hope to see you soon when we're back open. And please, everyone, stay healthy. And we're excited to see you again next week.